All right, this is a customer. This is just an example of the chassis work. He brought the truck in for just a. This is a '96 Ford Ranger step side. He brought it in for just a roll cage, but the chassis shop that it came from, and it was years ago. I think it was like 15 years, maybe old, something like that. But everything was wrong. So I had to narrow the front. I put it on the chassis jig initially. The body was just sitting on it when it got here. The frame was together, but it was just crooked as a dog's hind leg. So the chassis jig has got a bunch of stuff on it now, but I put it on the chassis jig and located it all, located the frame rails and everything. And what I wound up doing is I narrowed the front frame rails. They were on a 30-inch center, so now I narrowed them 3 inches. So now they're 27. Actually, they're 27 inches outside to outside. But I narrowed it right there. I cut it right there at the control arm mount and slid it over, and then rejigged everything up. And the rear frame rails were just way off. The housing, I had to build a new housing. That's a housing that I built. The old housing had a filler cap that I cut out of the old housing. I put in, and the threads warped, so we're waiting on a new filler cap to come in. But it's a ladder bar Ford 9-inch rear end. It's got a drain plug in it right there, and that's a little jack. You put the floor jack underneath that so it don't scratch the paint on the rear end. But I built the housing, Ford 9-inch housing for it. Redid the frame rails, straightened the rear frame rails, put the drive shafts. I put 2 drive shaft safety loops in it. I put that square tube drive shaft safety loop in there, that one, and then also I put this one in right here, and that one's got to be trimmed to height yet. But then I built all the floor bars, everything. Some of the tubing this is all old tubing he had for the floor. That's why they're kind of discolored. Built all that. Put the motor and transmission in it. I built him a removable transmission cross member. You can see where it unbolts on each side. Comes out where you can drop the transmission out of the truck. Put the mid plate in it. Like I say, mounted the motor, transmission. It's on a 13-inch crankshaft center line from the ground, so it's a Pro Street truck. It's not a drag car. Put the roll cage in it. The only thing I didn't do was I didn't have to remount the control arm mounts and the coilover mounts. That was all done by S&W race cars on the frame rail, so that was all right. But everything else I did. Cut out the firewall for motor. It's a big block Ford for clearance of the motor, and I had left it back. He's going to put the factory radiator in it with the pulleys and bracketry and all that stuff up front, so it sits way back in the car. Put the pedals in it. Steering column. I had to redo the ladder bar mounts, put new ladder bar brackets on the chassis and the rear end housing that I made him. Had to narrow the track locator. Let's see. I mounted there's the master cylinder. It's just sticking up whenever the sheet metal's in it. Just the top of the master cylinder will stick up above the floor. And there's the brake pedal, put the gas pedal in it, the steering column, the seats, pretty much the whole car. It's an 850 cert, so I didn't X the doors. I just put a brace in it, a partial, a part of an X, so it's easier to get in and out of the car. I put a drop in the door bars to where, it's easy. There's plenty of room to get in and out of it. And so then I still have to put the bed on it. I'm going to do that today. The step side bed and then run the down bars back to the back of the bed, and then mount the fuel cell behind it, and it's leaving today. But as an example of the chassis work that I do, it's that's what it is. You can see the A-pillar bars are real tight on both sides. They're not sticking out in your way, or if they're in your line of sight. They're real tight against the A-pillars. So that's what it looks like. This is a 96 Ford Ranger